One of the most famous short stories in the world is the parable of the lost son, the prodigal son, told by Jesus Christ in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15. But who is the story really about? Well, watch it for yourself and see what you think.
The ministry of Jesus had brought many people to God, and among them were people who were regarded as sinners. The Pharisees began to criticize him. These sinners are unclean in the sight of God, and you actually welcome them. An argument with the Pharisees would have achieved nothing. So Jesus responded with a story about a father and two sons. The family lived in a village, but they were not poor. The land they owned had been handed down for generations, and it was a great blessing to have two sons. These men would carry their father's name, they would maintain his honor, and they would inherit his land. But the younger son was not satisfied. He demanded his inheritance right now, while the old man was still alive. This was shocking. He had insulted his father and his brother and his whole family. To the older brother, the land was the work of all his ancestors. To the younger son, it was just cash. His father understood the meaning exactly. I just wish you were dead. I want to sell your property. Amazingly, the father allowed him to do it. Now the young man had cash and plenty of it. He wanted to be free. Free to do just what he wanted. Free from what his father said was right and wrong. Free from everything. Nothing would change his mind. He left his family and his village. He left the land God had given to his ancestors, the land of promise. He knew he had deeply offended his community. The people of the village would never forgive him. Never. From now on, there was no going back. He had rejected them, and they had rejected him. Most of all, he had hurt his family. But the father knew that to hold the young man against his will was pointless. He was not just moving to the nearest town, where his father might come and find him and try to bring him back. He was leaving behind everything he and his family had ever known. He was determined to get completely clear of his father's influence. The journey ahead of him was going to take some time, and it was not without danger. But he would go on and hope for the best. He traveled for many days until his homeland lay far behind him, and ahead of him was a new country where everything would be different. That was what he wanted. At last he arrived in a city where the people and laws and customs were very different from his own. But one thing was the same in the Gentile city. People had to eat, and that meant a bakery. But how was he to know how much things cost in a place like this? The fact was, he had no idea. He had plenty of money from the sale of his father's land, and no real idea of value. As an immigrant in a foreign country, he was extremely vulnerable, and he had no friends at all. If he wanted to be accepted here, he must learn to fit in. The clothes he wore in the village would not do in the big city. To start with, he must look right. After that, he would find a place where he could have some fun. Life would be exciting, and he would enjoy it every day. These people believed in many gods, and for many gods they had many temples. They thought that life was controlled by fate. They believed in good luck and bad luck and astrology. So in the temples they made offerings to the gods, hoping to win their favor. The young Jewish farmer had been brought up to know better than this, so perhaps he should keep quiet about religion. In a city like this, there was always something to see. New sights, new sounds, new ideas. Compared to his life in the village, this was a whole new world, and he was eager to see and hear all of it. Many cities in the Roman Empire boasted of their amphitheatres and the fights they sponsored for the public. His father would have thought them disgusting, but these people seemed to enjoy them. Some gladiators were professionals, but most of them were slaves who lived only a few weeks after training. This was a society which cared nothing for the value of human life, where one man's murder was another man's entertainment. People enjoyed watching violence. Human beings could be bought and sold like cattle. All a gladiator could hope for was to put up a good performance and hope to live until the next fight. Entertainment, parties, living high. It just went on and on. The food he was eating was forbidden in a Jewish house, but his Gentile friends seemed to enjoy it, and there was always a cup of wine to wash it down. They didn't have parties like this in the village. It all felt so good. Far away from his father and his older brother, he could do just what he wanted. He was having a good time, always plenty of friends, ready and willing to party with, so long as he was paying all the bills. Life in the city was exciting, and the young man thought he was enjoying it to the full. His lifestyle was extravagant. The weeks and months went by, and he was spending his money as if it would last forever. It never seemed to enter his head that half of everything his father had worked for was being wasted, and there was nothing to take its place. That one day everything would change. One day there would be no more money to pay for all this, and then what? At last it happened. The money ran out. There was nothing left. He had never thought about getting a regular job. He had no credit, no possessions, no place to call his own, no family, no one to turn to. He had nothing, nothing at all. Creditors could literally take the clothes off his back. But he was fortunate. Other men in his position had been sold in the slave market to pay their bills. At least he still had his freedom. But that was all. There was no place in this city to offer him shelter and food, and now there was famine in the land. Food was getting scarce and very expensive. He used whatever he had left to get something to eat, but these days it would not go far, and even bread was hard to find. No one really cared if he lived or died. At last, a citizen of the country agreed to become his patron and give him work. It was one step above slavery. He was told to feed pigs. He was Jewish, and he had despised his birthright, and now he was feeding pigs. He had lost everything. Even the pigs had something to eat. At last he made a decision. My father's workmen have plenty of bread, and I'm here dying of hunger. I'm going to get up and go to my father and ask for a job. This time the journey would be much harder, and he was weak from lack of food, and he had no money. But he must go on. He must get home. Father, he would say, I have sinned against God and against you. I don't deserve to be called your son ever again, but give me a job like one of your workmen. Even now, he did not understand that forgiveness could not be earned. It would be given freely or not at all. His father had good eyesight for an old man, and he knew he must be the first to reach his son. Only in this way could he come safely through the village. The men and women of the community felt they had been rejected and betrayed by this stupid young man. Why should they have mercy on him now? What he deserved was a good beating. So his father must reach him first. He knew that an elder should walk with dignity, but what did that matter if he could get to his son and bring him safely home? The young man tried to make a speech. "Father, I have sinned against God and against you. I'm not worthy to be called your son." But the father had other ideas. Quickly he said, "Bring my best robe and put it on him, and a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. Let us feast and celebrate." While the son rested after his journey, the father was preparing a feast for the whole village. The calf they had kept for a festival would be eaten today. Neighbors and friends came to join in the celebration and share in the father's joy. He had waited patiently for his son's return, and now he had been rewarded. It was so good to see him happy again. But he wanted the whole community to share his happiness. He wanted a party. The village knew the young man had done nothing to deserve this welcome, but to accept the father's invitation to the feast meant also accepting the son as part of the family. But even now there was a problem. The older brother had been working in the fields, and when he got home he refused to come in. He despised his brother and wanted nothing to do with him. But this was also a public insult to his father. "Listen," he said, "for all these years I've worked for you like a slave. But when this son of yours comes back, who spends your money on prostitutes, you go and kill the fatted calf for him." The father pleaded with him, "But my son, you are always with me, and all I have is yours. It was right to celebrate and rejoice, for your brother was dead and has come back to life again. He was lost and has been found." When Jesus came to the end of his story, the truth was clear enough. The younger son knew he was a sinner, but the older son too needed a change of heart. The Pharisees were wrong to criticize the love Jesus showed to sinners. In doing so, they criticized the love of God.
The father in this story lost both of his sons in different ways, and both sons brought shame to their father. The youngest son who left home was not just a boy who made some mistakes. He was a man old enough to sell the family property. Knowingly, deliberately, he turned his back on his father, his family, his nation, and the covenant God had made with his people. Now, some of the Pharisees believed that if a man wanted to repent, he must also make good what he had done wrong. For the younger son, this was clearly impossible. There was no way he could put it all right again. So in the end, what he did was very simple. He swallowed his pride, came home, and asked his father for forgiveness. The love, the forgiveness, and the welcome home from his father were as undeserved as they were free. It's a picture of God. When Jesus Christ received sinners, he did not underestimate the seriousness of their sin, but he gave them an opportunity for repentance. They were welcome to come home. So, welcome home.